In T-minus 3, 2, 1, we begin the fun. Touring our way through the NBA from that big apple to the place by the bay. Is your mind buckled in? Because it's time to begin. Sekou and his friends are doing it again. The Hang Time Podcast is the spot, so sit back, relax, because the show's about to drop.
Welcome into another edition of the Hang Time Podcast. I'm your host, Sekou Smith, here in Atlanta. Got one of my favorite people to speak to in the world about whatever on the line for this week's episode. Caron Butler, NBA champion, NBA All-Star, an analyst, philanthropist, social activist. Man, you wearing so many hats, and I think that's appropriate right now, given the climate of what's going on. We're trying to survive a global pandemic with the coronavirus pandemic, stretching around the globe, and also the racial inequality roundtable that you had last week, which was as timely and pertinent as anything I could think of, man. When you wake up and take a deep breath today, like what's going through your mind?
Man, my heart is heavy because, one of the things that we always touch on is just like mental well-being. And when you think about some of the things that we addressed on the virtual roundtable, we talked about systematic racism. And Brother Brad Stevenson that came on, and he's the guy whose film and his life was portrayed on the film by Michael B. Jordan in Just Mercy. And he was a lawyer. And one of the things that he touched on was just how we got to this point. And then you add all that and combine that up with, the trauma of, being isolated and possible depression and all the mixed emotions. And on top of that, not being able to educatedly know how to, de-stress or, get therapy in those moments. And then now you're being overwhelmed and drowned in trauma, because you're seeing people that look like you, that come from the environments that you come from, being, slain. And it's trauma all over again, and it's resetting. And in the midst of all of this, where we're supposed to be unifying and coming together, because COVID doesn't discriminate, and we're trying to love our neighbor and try to uplift and try to be supportive. And you got people using their platforms in an amazing way, and then you have this regression because now things like this, set us back, and then everybody just being extremely emotional right now, as they should be, because this hit home. Me and my whole entire family was watching the news and watching the optics of what happened, and I was just set back, bro. Like, it hit so hard, I was speechless.
It's so many conversations that we're having around our houses right now, with everybody being sheltered, and let me not forget that as a part of the NBA's NBA Together initiative during this coronavirus pandemic. That is why you were hosting that weekly roundtable. And it's really focusing on the virus's impact on communities of color all over the United States. And I could not think of I was like, man, when is the last time this sort of stuff was happening where we had this sort of connection to the technology? Watching that video of Mr. Floyd with a knee on his neck, begging for air. I was like, man, I remember when I was a teenager, me and my dad sat up on a Sunday morning and watched Nelson Mandela get released from prison. It was on CBS this morning. I'll never forget it. And I was like, we don't have those sorts of moments anymore. This shutdown has allowed us as families, as fathers, sons, whatever, to have those kind of moments together where we're talking about these things, where we are dialoguing about all this stuff. Have you found yourself having more of those conversations than basketball conversations in recent weeks?
Yeah, heavy. Like, in our household, we always, pride ourselves on, the education and informing aspect of it, where, I'm almost like speaking a foreign language when I talk about sports and stuff, because outside of my son, they're not really into the basketball world once I retired. You know what I mean? So all our conversations is really away from entertainment as a whole. It's about life. It's about laying that proper foundation, to your point, and just preparing them for, their foreseeable future. And then when things like this happen, like you almost prepare them in survival mode from, look, this is why it's important to know how to grow food. This is why it's important to do this. This is why it's important to do that. And then all of a sudden you get hit with the reality of, just blaming racism, a racist act that took the life of a human being. And it's just like, man, what do you do? Because my family sit around and I go in the back of my studio and my family literally record and watch me doing my virtual roundtables. And we have people from all walks of life, where NBA Together has given me an amazing platform to just educate and be informed while informing others. And then at the same time, my family are getting informed in real time too with me. And then when things like this happen, we think that we're moving the needle on this discussion, which we are. But at the same time, it's just like, it's super deflating, because it's like, come on, man, like this didn't have to happen.
No. It's been an issue I've had for years. And I've talked about this with NBA players, NBA coaches, and it goes back to the culture that's crafted long before guys get to the league. So I commend you and everybody else who steps out on that platform and speaks to this. But there's this nagging thing to me about authority, black males, the threat that people perceive to be there, the threat to each other, the threat to the outside world, and the refusal of people to come together. Like, it shouldn't take, a global pandemic or some sort of violence for guys to sit down and kind of vibe on that thing. And I've seen that rift go all the way back for the first time I ever went to a locker room, just kind of that inherent distrust or disconnect between the black males in the room and the young black males who should be gleaning that wisdom and learning from that. When you go out and speak to these young guys in these communities, in prisons and wherever, what's disconnect? What is the disconnect you notice that hasn't been bridged between those two parties?
Well, I have to just say this: the trust. People are typically in survival mode. Especially when you go to the penitentiary and things like that, where I sit down with some of these brothers, male and females, from all different walks of life, or anything from violent crimes to something as simple as just multiple parking tickets. And it's just everybody's trying to be in survival mode and just try to get their self together and get out, not thinking of a whole collectively. And I said numerous times in our gatherings, if we collectively thought as a unit, and how to better, these neighborhoods, how to hold, people in position that's our representation, politicians, accountable, and not feel like, oh man, my vote doesn't matter and all these things. If we was informed and educated about all these policies and how to really strategically move these situations for the better of, our people as a whole, I think that, it'll look a lot different for us. What happens is that, like, we get discouraged when the outcome isn't immediate. And that happens because of, one, the generational brainwash, and then also just the optics of seeing what has happened in the more recent past. But everything isn't microwavable. It takes time for real change. But, people have to believe and be committed to the cause and just stay with it. And I think in due time, those things will happen, because, I've been a part of initiatives where, we went knocking at the door, like immediately when this COVID thing hit. And we was like, man, we're trying to get prisoners out of jail. And it didn't happen initially. And we went and knocked again. It didn't happen. And then we kept knocking, and, 25, 30,000 people are being released because, COVID has become the epicenter of mass incarceration. It lives in jails where they cannot social distance. So people with non-violent crimes was able to walk free, and not they pay their due to society, but at the same time, they're not sentenced to a death sentence. So It took time for real change to happen, and I was proud of that.
Yeah, when you were playing in the league, it seems like it was kind of we've passed generations in terms of the social awareness of players has increased, not by virtue of them not caring, but by there being all these different platforms where they're able to display it publicly. Was there something that had to be shored up in order for us to have so many loud, impactful voices? I know, LeBron and Colin Kaepernick have, made public statements that go around the world about what happened in Minnesota. You have the Central Park situation going on. People were there, we have NBA players and athletes stepping into that space and speaking on it so loudly. What changed from when you first got into the league in a social situation like this to what's going on now?
I'm glad you asked that. You know what, Sekou, honestly, I think that the brands started to change. What was subjectively like to be like discouraging and deflating, and no, we have to pivot away from this athlete because this athlete is, standing for something. That's not the traditional way. Like you can't say that and then we still market you, because now you would turn away certain consumers or whatever the case may be. But once the brands had changed and, people start backing, social injustices, people start backing, the power to rock the vote, not telling you who to vote for or anything like that, but just supporting initiatives. And I think that it just changed from that standpoint. Like, even when I first came into the league, man, like it wasn't cool to like comment about my past or to let people know my truth. But I was just, it took courage to do that. And once I did it and the NBA understood the character of the person who I was and they supported me 100%, now the impact was just stronger and it was different. And not only that, it gave people that came from the same walk of life that I came from to, have courage to be like, you know what, I can thrive on this platform because this is going to be a beautiful marriage because they're going to be supportive. And I think now the narratives have just changed drastically. Like, so now it's cool for guys to use their platform on initiatives and spread awareness and inform people.
Here's a quick piece of that NBA Together roundtable that you hosted, and I think just to give people a good sense of what goes on in that forum, here's a little bit of that for them to chew on, CB, so they can just understand.
Sport is really more than just a game for many of our young people. The people who are normally in the lives of these kids, they're not there anymore.
That's kind of what inspired me to uplift, be a positive voice for the voiceless.
I think we as a society have to allow room for young people to talk about what's going on for them mentally and emotionally.
We didn't have a choice about being forced to stay in and all of this, but we do have a choice about how we come out.
You had such a diverse group of people on that roundtable, and the experiences that people are bringing to these same situations, but coming from so many different avenues. Have you noticed that as ball players or as former ball players, because I know Jaylen Brown is doing one this week, have you noticed that there's just a natural connection that you're able to have with all these different groups? Because let's face it, y'all, ball players tend to be the most visible people in our society. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I know some people would take that as a knock on society, but I don't think so. But the idea that you would be able to bridge gaps because people recognize faces, recognize stories. Have you found that that's been, a connector instead of a divider for y'all when you're going into these conversations with other people from different walks of life?
It's crazy because like you look at folks that like I played in the Nation of Capital for 6 years, and you look at like Bonita Gupta and so many more like Cynthia Marshall and so many more like playing with the Dallas Mavericks. Like the sports and entertainment has always been our connection. So like initially when you come in, you think like the conversation is going to be foreign or the connection is going to take some time to have because we all come from different walks of life, but at the same time, entertainment is our connection, and they're just as familiar with us as we are with them because, now, if you get out of the entertainment space, you're turning on the news and you're trying to get educated and informed on what's happening, what should I be doing from a protection standpoint with COVID, and then now you're getting educated from all different aspects too, because some of these folks that's been featured on this virtual roundtable are the same folks that you're watching on some of these major news outlets. So when we come together on the roundtable, it's just like it's an immediate connection because we all trying to do better. We all want to be informed on what each other is doing and educated, and then also just we all share that connection. Like, look, we just want to be better. We want to give back. We want to empower. We want to educate. And how do we do it the smartest way? And that's what I've learned, in all these virtual roundtables. And this has been like super educational for me. And I know that everybody that's been a part of it have circled back immediately and reached out and said, that was a pretty dope experience.
Yeah. I know you've taken inspiration in your life from a lot of places, but I know I've heard you say this several times that your brother and the beloved late Kobe Bryant used to talk to you about the second act always being better than the first. You seem like you're knee deep and maybe chest deep now in that second act, and it's on you and fitting you well. What about 40-year-old Caron Butler do you enjoy being able to do, whether it's the reach you have or just the voice? What about this second act are you enjoying at this time, even in a time where it's tough to deal with like it is right now?
You know what? I made a commitment, and we made a vow to each other that what you just touched on, Segu, that our second act was going to be better than our first. And I'm a man of honor and commitment, and that vow that I made to him, kind of went to a whole nother level, when, he wasn't no longer here in the physical form. And I honor that to the utmost. And what I'm trying to do and what I enjoy doing is just having a free mind and a free way of thinking and having a platform to do it and having the credibility, right? Because so many times people follow waves and, trends, but I'm just speaking on what I've been educated on and also from my experiences. And it feels damn good just to know that when you come from a real solid place, like it's different. Like when you like, damn, I really don't know nothing about this and I just don't know how to speak on this, but I'm just speaking on my experiences personally and things that I've informed and educated myself on. And now I say this with the utmost respect. Like I thank God for the NBA for just saying, yo, this your platform. We're going to put you in front of 30, 40 million viewers once a week, and you go ahead and speak your truth. And that's a blessing, bro. Like, you don't get an opportunity like that. I got hundreds of thousands of social media followers, and that's an amazing platform to be on. But the diverse path and platform that the NBA has to allow me to tell my truth and inspire and educate and inform myself, it's priceless, man. I'm beyond grateful to have that.
Yeah, no, that's well said, man. You are a basketball analyst. I don't want to bury that part of the story. I mean, and we're getting closer and closer to some sort of resolution on what happens with this 2019-2020 season. You saw the statement like everybody else that the league is exploring this option in Orlando with a campus and a resumption of the season. What does a proper resumption of the 2019-2020 season look like to you?
Well, first and foremost, I know that it'll be a safe environment. I talking to Chris Paul and some of the guys, I know they're eager and anxious to get back to playing just because that's the competitive nature of all the guys. But, I know it'll be safe. And I think that, when you look at the regular season and guys and organizations that was like right there on the Cubs, I feel bad. Mark Cuban laid out an amazing play-in with the teams and, have the one-game play-in for, the last teams that, I forget the format, but it was an interesting format. But I just say, let's get right to the playoffs, man. Whatever the season is right now, let's just go right to it. conference finals is 7, and then clearly the finals should be 7. But the playoff series from there on, from the beginning, should be 3 games. 2-1 series. You advance and just have it like that. Like, let's get right through it as fast as possible and as safely as possible.
Yeah, I know a lot of people say, well, this would be an asterisk if they come back and they have some changes to it. I never felt like any championship that was won during a lockout deserved an asterisk. I mean, you win a championship, you win a championship. So I got no problem with how we get it back. I want to see somebody play to win a championship. I want to see somebody have to work for that Larry O'Brien trophy. You know what that's like. I mean, that's a sense of achievement, not only for the journey that season, but for careers. I mean, that makes careers when a guy can go through a championship campaign and be in that parade going down Main Street somewhere. I just feel like there won't be an asterisk on it for me, no matter how we get it back, if we get it back.
It definitely wouldn't be one on it for me as well. Like, when you look at this season as a whole, man, and look at some of the things that we had to go through, and David Stern, God rest his soul, my late great brother, as you touched on, Kobe Bryant, and in the midst of COVID and so many changes, and for athletes still to find a way to stay consistent in their regimens and stay in shape, and then all of a sudden now you're getting back introduced to the practice facilities, and then you have to relocate and find a way to still impose your will on being great and being competitive and compete at a high level and fight through a playoff series with a possibility of being separated from your loved ones. That's a new norm. So that would actually add on to it. Like, when you think about it, and when the story of basketball is told, you'd be like, how did they possibly win that championship? I think this team that hoists up this trophy is going to be like, man, like they go in the record book in a whole different level. Yeah, like, bro, it's different. This gonna be a big one.
Yeah, I agree, man. I think it's so interesting too that we having these dual track conversations, man. So I appreciate your time. You keep educating, informing, sharing, social media and everywhere else, man. The NBA Together is a outstanding platform for people to dive into, and you got it all on social media as well. So y'all be safe out there, and I hope to see you on the other side of this thing, man, in the studio again, doing what we do.
Man, bro, I miss you, brother, man. Be well out there.
No doubt. Appreciate it, CB. Can't say enough about Caron Butler. As I mentioned, one of my favorite people, over the years to come in contact within this league. An unbelievable life story. And as I mentioned, doing things in his second act now that he's retired. Commendable, and admirable, not only for his community, but for communities across the country. So we appreciate him coming on, talking about NBA Together and the league and all that he's got going on. We're going to continue to look towards June 1st and the start of June, maybe get some more understanding of what's coming in terms of a resumption of the 2019-2020 season. So everybody stay tuned. For Anthony Bonaparte, my producer here at the Hang Time Podcast, and for everybody involved, we appreciate you joining us, and we'll see you next time.
This one is done, but in case you want another one, here's the links to all the fun from Sekou Smith's Hang Time Run. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, NBA.com/hangtime, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next time, Hoops fans.